was thinking about what the energy of this week was going to feel like as we're looking at a new moon in Libra and then the sun transitioning into Scorpio and Neptune going back into the sign of Pisces. You know that feeling every time that you're about to embark on something new? And in the planning process, it feels so exciting. And you have your checklist and you know what needs to happen, you know what you need to pack, and you are intent on just crossing things off the list. Okay, that's Virgo. And then we have Libra. So the sun has been in Libra, and Libra is always bookended on one side by Virgo, the planner, the doer, the perfectionist. Then we get into Libra, and Libra is the part of us that's idealizing, like, oh, it's going to be so amazing. And I'm making this plan because this is what I want. And I'm going to fulfill a dream, and it's all going to be so romantic and so lovely. And then we have to move into Scorpio, and Scorpio is the transformation. So imagine you have packed for your trip, for your adventure, for the next thing. And we watched this when we had a mass exodus of teenagers, as I've shared with you guys, this fall leave to go to college. So it was all excitement and the romance of what college was going to be like. You're thinking about how is this going to be and who am I going to meet, et cetera. And then you actually have to face that Scorpio part that says, now you have to do the thing. Now you have to get on the plane. Now you have to embark on this thing that you have been idealizing. And it's scary. And that's us moving into Scorpio this week, not to mention we're dealing with the shifting of Neptune into Pisces. So our fears are starting to get activated. Now, it's the kind of fear that isn't necessarily real, but it brings up that sharpness, that, oh my God, what have I done kind of feeling. So we're going to be talking about that. I am Martha Perkins of Electra Astrology, and this is the Path Ahead. This is my weekly astrology forecast. We're looking at October 20th through the 26th, and we've got some interesting stuff happening. So just take a moment and honor that part of you that is going through some significant adventuring right now, shifting, changing, transformation. I just got finished doing about 25 of my energetic transmissions, my inner alignment offering, which is where I am going in and doing astrology for people. I'm pulling oracle cards, and almost everybody is poised on some sort of transformation. That was the majority of the questions. People saying, I know I need to make this leap. Please help me figure out how to do that. And that's where we all are. I think it's safe to say that we're all poised on transformation in some matter. And that's appropriate given the astrology and looking at this North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo, because we are all having to up level into trust, into facing the fear so that we can understand that the fear is actually the worst part about it. The reality is very different from what we're actually fearing. So we're going to talk about that. By the way, if you want to find me, electroastrology.com. I also have a really cool new offering called the Celestial Year, where I'm diving in with you one-on-one to talk about how each of these astrological archetypes affects you, how you act out Venus, money, worth, value, love, relationship, how you act out Mars, boundaries, independence, identity, etc. And it's so cool. I love working with people like this. So you can find that at electroastrology.com. And let's look at the charts. So we have this new moon at 28 degrees of Libra on October 21st. It's not a very easy new moon because it is in this yod with these outer planets, Uranus and then Neptune and Saturn. So that means that there's a lot of pressure on these Libra parts of us. And 28 degrees is a high level master degree. So the part of us that is seeking out the balance, that wants to figure out who we are, even when we are in relationship, that wants to really nail this part of us that goes into like the, oh, okay, whatever you want kind of mentality, which is very culturally acceptable to get pushed into being the pleaser or the one that acquiesces or the one that's easy. And Libra does rule, we get what we want by knowing how to work a crowd, by knowing how to be appealing enough to people that we get what we need, but it's really easy to go over the top into I've given myself away because I've just gone into that part of me that's like, oh, hi, thank you. Yes, okay, whatever you want. So there's something really potent about this particular moon, and it's being pressed on by Uranus. Uranus in Gemini is like, you have to look at this differently. One of the things that I kept asking in these energetic alignment reports that I was doing is, what is this person not able to see? Because that is a big part of what gets in our way. What are we not able to see? We can see a lot, but we also get into these ruts based on what our mind is accustomed to perceiving. And that's Uranus and Gemini saying you have to look at it differently. You have to be able to ask yourself a different kind of question and expect a different kind of answer. And so there's something about this moon that will be pressing on you and saying, are you still acting out the same old patterns around pleasing or around wanting to appear nice or romanticizing or flirting your way into something? How is it not working for you? And you might not even know the answer to that, because if we don't know something, we don't know it, but we can certainly be seeking to find a different answer. And that's what Uranus is pushing on us to do. And then we have this pair of Neptune and Saturn. Neptune always says there's nothing to be done. It's all to be felt and to be experienced. And then Saturn says, oh, there's plenty to be done. But in this case, Saturn is in Pisces, which brings us back to that same energy of Neptune. There's nothing to be done, it's all to be felt. So remember that this is a new moon where you're inward and you are introspecting and you're not trying to find the specific answer. You're not coming to the conclusion, but you're asking yourself the questions. What am I not seeing here? Am I trapped in being nice? Am I trapped in thinking that being pretty and pleasing is the only way out here? This moon is also in a square to Pluto, so it's asking for the transformation. And, we have a lot of Scorpio energy. Mars and Mercury are in a conjunction in Scorpio, and that is precise. So even though, yes, you are asking to rest in the pause, you're asking to be observational of what you notice around you instead of pushing into action. This Mercury Mars conjunction says be precise with what you see. If you get a download, write it down. If something comes to you as a piece of action, if you get the advice to act, go ahead and act on it. This is fast incoming information. This is like if you read tarot, this is like the Knight of Swords or the Page of Swords. This is energy, information, and direction that comes in swiftly. So you want to pay attention to it. On the 22nd, the sun enters Scorpio. So now that brings us with Mercury, Mars, Moon briefly, and Sun in Scorpio. Scorpio is the energy of, oh my God, now I actually have to get on the plane to start the journey, or I actually have to go to college and move into my dorm. This is where the pedal hits the metal, and we have to face what life looks like as we're moving into what's new. And I'll keep using these energetic transmissions as an example, because a lot of the guidance that comes through when I say, what is this person not seeing, is that we have to face a certain level of truth, right? We have to say, well, there's a reason why I'm scared to embark on this journey. And why is that? Well, because I don't feel capable. What if something happens and I can't take care of myself? Or what if nobody likes me when I get there? Or what if I fail? What if I fail out? What if something bad happens? And that's why the Scorpio archetype is always so daunting, because it addresses the kind of fear that correlates to the bad things that have happened to us in the past. So, because we have a human brain and we want to avoid pain and suffering as much as possible, we will consciously steer ourselves away from things that we know might hurt. And we know that something might hurt because we've been hurt in the past. However, this is all energy about transcending, about really understanding the difference between the reality of what's happening now versus the reality of what has happened in the past. Because you might have been rejected in the past, or you might have made a mistake in the past. It does not mean that you're going to recreate it here. But part of having to just strap in and start the journey into what's next is in addressing some of the stuff that has happened in the past that maybe we haven't fully processed. Maybe we've been defending ourselves against having to feel that again. And as always with Scorpio stuff, I'm going to go into this in my Astrology for Awakening series because we begin with the Scorpio talks this week. We're going to be talking about what a powerful archetype Scorpio is for each of us because it's where we find the courage to face that deep, dark stuff, and then we get freedom from it. So we're feeling that. We're also on the 24th going to see the sun come into a square with Pluto. So the sun was active last week. We talked about how the sun in the chart is that part of us that's always seeking to know ourselves, seeking to understand where we end and the world begins, what we feel in our heart, how we relate to all of this through being in this body, this persona, this psyche that we have grown into or inherited. So last week, the sun was opposing Chiron and squaring Jupiter. This week, the sun squares Pluto. Pluto rules Scorpio, so there's a lot of interactive energy here, but it is asking you to get acquainted with some of the parts of you that are more difficult. And listen, this is not easy. I believe it was Jeff Green in his book, Pluto, The Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, where he talks about statistically how few people are actually spending some portion of their time being awake, as we would call it. Hardly anybody on the planet is awake all the time. We're always slipping back into our stuff. And the Pluto Scorpio archetype is one of the ones that we really look at to gauge whether we are in a space of awakeness, of awareness, or in a space of being shut down in our addictions, our manipulations, our fears, our autopilot, our trauma. So we're surrounded all the time by people that are just pretty impossible. They don't have a lot of conscious awareness. They're just going through their lives, acting out what they've always done. They just aren't able to access a lot of self-awareness. So look around your life as you're navigating this week and look at people and witness them. Notice how trapped in all of their stuff they are, because that's Sun square Pluto. Where are you in a prison of your own making because you can't get past pain and suffering that you've experienced? You can't see yourself clearly. Instead of looking at yourself, you're numbing, you're coping, you have your head in the sand, you're trying to manipulate other people. This comes up all the time in my readings, where it's a client dealing with somebody in their life that's totally unconscious or not self-aware at all. And they're just acting out patterns, the same old patterns that they've been acting out for this person's whole life. And my client says, what am I supposed to do? Well, there's nothing that we can do about other people and their unconsciousness. We have to turn that to ourselves and say, how can I relate to this person from the most conscious place possible? And a lot of times that means we just aren't in strong relationship with the unconscious person in our lives. And so you might notice some of that this week where you realize I have to keep somebody at arm's length, or the unconscious part of me was what just had a reaction to that person. Because the more that you're in some sort of awareness, even if you're dipping in and out, the more that you're in some sort of awareness, the less that you're acting out your unconscious stuff. So I'll give you an example. I had a friend for years who was pretty needy and always seemed to want more from me than I really wanted to give them. But that Libra part of me, that pleaser part, the part that thought if I was a good friend, then I would keep showing up for them. They need help. Why don't I help them? They're lonely. Why don't I go spend time with them? Like on some level, I was looking at all of their neediness as something that I could solve, something that I could fix. Eventually, as I became more conscious and more aware of my own needs for boundaries and my own nervous system and how my nervous system felt around them, I began to back away. Just recently, I noticed that I had an email from this person after not talking for ages. And in the email, it was that same kind of needy energy of like, wow, I've really missed you. I don't know where you've been. I've been going through a lot. And the old part of me went into, oh, I feel so guilty. I haven't talked to them. I haven't responded to them. I need to get something on the calendar so that blah, blah, blah. I can take care of them. I can make them feel better, whatever. And that was when the part of me that was tracking my nervous system said, oh, I don't feel good after reading that email. I feel really contracted and I feel ick. So why am I going to reach back out to them to put them on my calendar so that I can, what, spend 2 hours with them in real life with that same kind of ick? No. So this is an example of Sun square Pluto. And you're going to be feeling different versions of this all week where you have to face the parts of yourself that are not so great in order to evolve. So, in these questions that I ask of the energetic transmissions when I'm tuning in for these people, it's like, what is this person not seeing? Or what is blocking this person from getting what they want? And the answer is always something like, are you willing to see yourself? Are you willing to see those places where you turn into something that's not helping you? Where you're ignoring your own needs, where you feel that you have to manipulate a situation instead of just being honest about it, where you go into blaming the other person. Why are they so needy? Why are they always trying to get something from me instead of looking at the fact that you don't have good boundaries with them? This is some stuff that we all get to look at. Now, I also wanted to say this. At this point, Neptune has moved back into Pisces, and that actually happens on Wednesday, the 22nd. So, this is also contributing to that same energy where we have to go back into the past. Neptune bringing us back into Pisces. And Neptune was in Pisces since 2011, but this has been a huge spiritual awakening energy. I've told you this before, but look back at your life since 2011 and just notice how your relationship to your higher self, to this higher level connection, has changed. What have you learned? Because even though we spent the summer and most of the fall with Neptune being in Aries, now it's traveled back into Pisces. So we're back into cleaning up and finalizing. And Pisces also brings with it a lot of fear in the same way Scorpio does. Scorpio says, I don't want something bad to happen again. Pisces says, what if the worst happens? And most of the time, we know the worst doesn't happen. And this is where we come back to the original analogy, which is like, I really wanted to take this trip. I really wanted to embark on this new transformational journey. And I've done all of the checking of things off of my list. I've done all of the preparation. And I have done all of the fantasizing and the romanticizing. And now I have to actually face the journey to get to this transformation. So not only am I facing the parts of myself that are fearful, but I also have to face the parts of myself that feel like I'm alone and I'm disconnected. And if I go on this journey, oh my God, there's nobody here to save me. I won't have the answers to any questions. And we're remembering everything that we've learned since 2011 about our relationship to God, to higher power. And we remember, I do have what it takes. I have learned so much. I've done a lot of traveling in my life. And every time I learn more about who I am and what I need and how to navigate issues. But there is still a part of me when I go to travel somewhere that feels like I'm 10 years old and I'm not traveling with my mom and I'm going to be scared and I'm not going to know how to get on the plane and how to find my gate. And that part of us that goes back into being a little person that has no skills and no tools. And then we have to bring ourselves back into reality and say, wait a minute. Like, I'm okay. I know how to read. I know how to work money. I have a phone. I have all of this life experience. That's what Neptune back into Pisces might bring up for all of us, is that young part of us that's like, ah, I'm all alone. I'm lost in the mall. Remember that? Do you remember losing your parents in the grocery store, or losing your parents in the mall? And it was like the terror that would descend as if what we thought our parents weren't going to try to find us, you know? So we're looking at facing a lot of fear over this next month, but this isn't fear that we are powerless against. This is fear that we absolutely know how to navigate, but we have to be grounded. We have to have our awareness. We have to remember that we have new defenses, We have new superpowers. We have new ways of connecting in with the universal energies, and that we are not as in danger as we may perceive. On the 23rd, we're watching Chiron and Jupiter square. This is sort of similar to that energy that we worked with last week, where the sun was in opposition to Chiron and squaring Jupiter. But Jupiter and Chiron actually do really good work together. Jupiter wants to grow and explore and help you make meaning. And Chiron is all about your wounds. So the square is making the tension. So it's not like this is all fun and games, but when we're in the rest of all of this messiness of saying, are you ready to face some of your fears so that you can see that they're not as potent as you thought? Yes? Okay, great. Well, let me help you make meaning of some of the wounds, some of the defenses that you built along the way, some of the things that have hurt you, that have gone to fortify your fears. Jupiter says, let me help you to understand them. Let me help you to make meaning out of them. And let me help you to use them so that you can survive in a different way, in a new way. Imagine being on an airplane and you are freezing cold and you spend the whole flight not being able to get warm enough. Well, guess what? The next time you go on a flight, you're probably going to bring a little blanket with you because you've learned. So Jupiter is helping us to understand, like, hey, just because you have been hurt in the past doesn't mean that you didn't learn powerful things from it. So just take a deep breath into all of that. There's a lot to unpack this week, but introspection, witnessing, allowing yourself to just be with what is without trying to change it and without judging it is going to be the medicine that gets you through, because there's so much stuff that is working behind the scenes right now. Even if you don't fully understand it or see it, the transformation is coming. We've been talking about it for so long and kind of waiting for it, and we are finally in the midst of it. Even if it's not revealing itself fully and clearly, the seeds have taken root. All right, I hope that you guys have a great week. And don't forget to tune in to Astrology for Awakening. We're talking about Scorpio for the next few weeks.